Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a Brazilian attorney, and today I'm going to be answering this question. How do fluctuations in currency exchange rates affect my transfer of money to Brazil? Well, the answer is like economic data, financial markets, and news are going to impact on the rate, but our recommendation is do not get attached to small variations. The idea is to monitor the rates over longer periods of time. And for instance, if you're gonna buy a house in Brazil, or if you're gonna send a substantial amount of money, just make sure that the currency in average is at a decent rate, but do not get attached to the daily or intraday rate. That's our recommendation. In terms of the fluctuation, for some apps like Wise, if you send the money to Wise, once you get a rate, they usually lock in the rate, and that's exactly the amount of reais that you see in your screen that the recipient is going to get. However, when you doing a bank-to-bank transaction, 9 times out of 10, you do not know exactly how many reais you're going to get until the end of the transaction. And the reason is, when you go to a bank, for instance, if you are in the US and you go to Chase Bank and you ask, all right, so how is the currency exchange rate? They're going to give you a reference rate. But Chase Bank does not handle the exchange. Chase is just going to send the money to Brazil. And that's the same for every single other US bank or European bank or Asian bank. They don't handle the actual exchange, so they cannot tell you exactly how many reais you're gonna get, okay? So they give you an idea, but once the currency is forwarded to the bank in Brazil, it's up to the Brazilian bank to handle first the compliance. So if it's over $10,000, they're gonna need documents explaining the reason for the transaction. They're gonna need documents showing that the source of funds is legitimate. And after they handle the compliance, they are gonna finally handle the currency exchange at the prevailing rate on that specific day, right? So between you send the money and the money arrives, there is a time gap. And then, compliance could take a couple of days or even more to approve the transaction. And it's only at that stage that the exchange is gonna be effected. Right, so there is a fluctuation in between. Now, many people who don't understand how extreme is regulation of currency exchange in Brazil, they are more concerned about just rates. However, it's also important to pay attention to something like, am I gonna be able to release this money? Because some people, they just send the money from the US, for instance, to Brazil. They don't have supporting documents, and guess what happens? When the money gets to Brazil, they are surprised. Oh, the money never arrived at the recipient. Yes, because the money is with compliance. And then compliance is going to tell the recipient person, listen, I need tax return from the sender. I need bank statements from the sender. I need, you're buying a property. I need the deed for the property. I need a contract that's going to prove that you're actually buying a property, right? And then the sending person, if this person doesn't have the paperwork, this money is not going to be released. And unfortunately, it's pretty common for the Brazilian recipient bank, if they don't get the documents they are asking for, they are just going to revert to the transaction. Basically, they just say, you know what, I'm not going to release this money, just send it back to the origin bank. And if you are in a contract, for instance, if you signed a contract to buy a property, you're gonna end up paying hefty penalties, because in Brazil it's customary when the buyer doesn't perform, he's gonna pay usually 10% of the property price as a fine for not performing. So you don't wanna be there, right? And that's the reason why we say, listen, sometimes people are fighting because 1 cent, 2 cents of a dollar in terms of rate, and they are forgetting that they could basically lose 10 times more, 100 times more, if they are unable to complete the transaction. So I hope this information was helpful. If you have a question about this theme, feel free to ask below. Follow us for more tips, and I hope to see you in our next video.